Dear God, let us never forget the mystery of every life we encounter. Amen. Why do we bless animals? This week I remembered why. Sometimes when I'm at the Bishop's Ranch Retreat Center above Healdsburg, I go running and I go as far as I possibly can. I run west. And on Wednesday of this week, setting off in a misty afternoon, rain filtered through the valley oak trees and the coast live oak trees. The whole woods was filled with the sound of all those raindrops hitting the leaves and in the grass. I ran along the contours of the hills under the shade of the California bay trees, the curving trunks, and on my way up to the path to the small lake there. And then I discovered that in the first rain of the season, the smell of those bay trees and the earth, they can heal your soul. So spectacular. By the time I reached the ridge, it had stopped raining, and the whole run is a kind of trap. And I realized that the further you go, the more beautiful it is. And the more beautiful it is, the less you want to come back. And so you end up just like going further than you can go, and you can't find your way back home. And I know that's the dynamic, so I promised myself, I said, listen, when I get down close enough into the valley where I can touch redwood bark, then I will turn back and go back to the retreat center. And of course, I didn't keep my vow, because on the hillsides, there were the most beautiful things. Like the sun had begun to come out, and the redwood trees had thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of little tiny droplets in them. And so when they're backlit from the light from the clouds on the other side of the ridge, it was almost like they had a kind of halo over them. They looked like almost like an icon of a person. And that's like my amen right there. A little dog amen. And so I went along the way, and I kept going, and it follows a little road through a creek. And in the creek, you could see the reflection of the broad oak maple leaves in the creek. And I knew I had to return right then. And so I turned back reluctantly. And as I turned around, I noticed about 15 feet up in a redwood tree, nearest on a branch nearest to the trunk, there was a spotted owl. And it was an extraordinary thing, because it was not that far. I'm closer to you. The bird was closer to me than I am to you. I mean, it was like that. And I saw that owl, and immediately it was watching me, and I immediately tried to just be as quiet as I could. And I realized that as I did that my body was just making a lot of noise. My chest was beating, my breath was heavy. And I realized that owls, you know how owls are, right? Their whole heads are kind of shaped like the bone structure of their heads, and the leaves are like a funnel that basically funnels sound into their ears. And owls have two different ears. The ears are different heights. So we can see things on an XY axis. Like if you heard me talking over here, you'd know. If you heard me talking there, you'd know. But if I was below you or under you, it would be harder to hear. Owls hear in 3 dimensions because their ears are not parallel with their heads. I didn't do a great job of explaining it, but you seem to understand. So there I was, and there the owl was, and I tried to be so still, and I couldn't help myself. Because I couldn't help myself, and eventually I just spoke to the owl. And so I said to the owl, I said, thank you for meeting me here. I said, thank you for existing. Thank you for this time that we have together. And in that moment, our lives felt so strangely joined, because I was on the outer edges of where I ever go. That owl may come there all the time, but we will never encounter each other again. And in that moment, in that encounter, in those circles of redwood trees by that creek that was flowing to the sea, we both received a kind of gift from God, a kind of interspecies gift. Now today we celebrate the life of the great Saint Francis, the patron saint of our city, and we are celebrating in the most beautiful ways. How many of you have ever heard a choir of men and boys and girls all singing like this? Oh. I felt like I just walked into heaven. I mean, it was just like the redwood forests are beautiful, but that was just absolutely spectacular. And Francis was a sort of saint who could appreciate other species, other life forms, and he would have loved that we're giving thanks for his life by making such beautiful music today. Now, Francis, when he first started out, was not, if you went to his high school graduation and asked who was the most likely to become a great saint, he would not have been the one who was chosen. You know, his father he was a very wealthy man. His father was a silk merchant, and he wanted to prove himself. He was kind of Dermot McCulloch, the historian, said he was a kind of playboy millionaire. So I kind of imagine him driving a red Lamborghini. But the way they did that in those days was he went off to war, and he just basically lived entirely for the sake of impressing other people, and then for the sake of just having just like the most sensual experiences possible. But then he came and realized that that was not going to be enough for him, that was not the way that he would find any kind of meaning in his life. And so what happened was he had this terrible fear of lepers, terrible fear of being with them. And one day he realized that he just needed to break that barrier, and he went and embraced a leper. And from that moment, by embracing that outcast, he began to make himself a kind of outcast for Christ, to make himself outside of the world so that he could let God's light shine. And this is what Francis wrote about that. He said, quote, "That which was bitter in me was changed into sweetness of soul and body." So Francis had changed so completely, and it kind of horrified his dad, the millionaire, but it was so deeply attracted to so many thousands of others because they saw the freedom that he had in his life and the love that he had for God and the joy that was manifest in him. Now, Francis taught his friends that the most significant thing about our existence is not our career or accomplishments, our possessions, our attractiveness, our health, our longevity. Instead, it is really being alive, noticing our connections to others, and feeling gratitude for our existence. Now, being special or above others is not what makes life meaningful. So according to Francis's song that we sang in that first hymn, the Canticle of the Sun, what matters is our participation in the social and natural world. Nature is not some distraction from a deeper, more spiritual essence. It is where we encounter God. Now, this is a controversial thing. There are philosophers like René Descartes who thought that animals just seem to have feelings and personalities, that they're really like little robots. That's what Descartes thought. And at the same time, there also lived a philosopher named Michel de Montaigne, and he believed very much in the inner life of animals. He thought and wondered about what they experienced and how they looked at the world. And this is what he wrote about his cat. He liked their different perspectives. He said, "When I play with my cat, who knows if I am not a pastime to her more than she is to me? We entertain each other. If I have my time to begin or refuse, so she has hers." And all of us who are around animals know what that's like. We may want to play, but our pet doesn't want to play with us at that point. Or the pet may want to play, and we may not want to play. We have to kind of negotiate that. In a month, my dog Poppy is going to be 16 years old. And sometimes it feels like a kind of tragedy that her whole book, we are her whole book, we're the only thing she's ever known. And for us, she's just a chapter in our life. And these days, she's been teaching me kind of like Flowers for Algernon, you know, the story about the future, like her own decay as a person, as an animal. She's got cataracts, she can't hear anymore, her spine sticks out, she doesn't eat as much as she used to, she's not able to walk as far. I almost feel like she's giving us a picture about what our future is going to be as we age. But Poppy is always on her own. She's always beyond our control. But she always also wants to please us. That's her personality. And in fact, although she could never comprehend the larger reality that we know, in many respects, by reading our nonverbal behavior, our dog Poppy knows us better than we know ourselves in certain respects. Now, lately, I've been thinking so much about St. Francis Day, and I've been thinking about the year during COVID when Poppy and I were the only ones here, and you all watched us on TV, and you remember Poppy just sitting so patiently next to the communion table and then following wherever I would go. She brought a lot of joy to us that year, and I'm so grateful for the way she helped us get through that. This week, we lost the primatologist Jane Goodall. And she died this week. She was a good friend of this cathedral. So she preached from this very pulpit on St. Francis Day. She was on the forum. She cared about what we do. For a while, Jane Goodall lived as a member of a chimpanzee community. She was the first person to write about how they used tools like a blade of grass to fish out termites from their nest. At the same time, other scientists resisted the idea that animals could have personalities. And Goodall instead talked about how chimpanzees, quote, kiss and embrace, hold hands, pat one another on the back. They show love and compassion, violence and primitive warfare. She said that because they are like us, they teach us about ourselves. Goodall dedicated her life to improving the conditions of other animals. She encouraged us to see them as our companions on this planet. And sometimes she even hinted that the salvation of our species may lie in beginning to have a new relationship with the other creatures of this world. In 2010, Goodall wrote, quote, I don't have any idea of who or what God is, but I do believe that there's a great spiritual power. I feel it particularly when I'm out in nature. It's just something that's bigger and stronger than what I am or what anybody is. I feel it, and it's enough for me. Now, perhaps I'm a fool for stopping in the woods to talk to an owl, but I believe that the people in my life who are like St. Francis and Jane Goodall are right. We experience the presence of God in our encounter with animals. Why do we bless animals? We bless them because they are not machines. They have personalities and are capable of love. We bless the wild animals who exist beyond the borders of our knowledge. We bless the animals who welcome us home. We bless them because of our deep desire to belong in creation and because they show us God. And they, in turn, they bless us.